Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn a little bell on the side, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one of getting all the insight. Now today's video, I would like to take you into a little bit of a depth of the 485 visa. Obviously, the Minister of Immigration last week on Thursday, 25th of November, had announced a lot of news, a lot of changes to the coming up skill migration, but there is a missing, not missing, but I think a very important factor of 485 visa, which reflects to all the vet sectors. Now, I think it's very important because it's the first step to actually revamp and changing the whole skill migration system by means of you are no longer required to choose an occupation. That also will mean there's no skill assessment requirement for 485 visa for the graduate stream. So in this video, I will take a detailed discussion and the comparison between the PSW and the Graduate-Work to show how that will actually reflect to the upcoming changes in the law, and obviously how that will affect a skill migration for the future. Let's jump in there and have a look at what had actually been said by the Minister of Immigration first, and then we will look into the detail there. Now, obviously, a lot of people have actually seen this news and this media announcements, but I would like to take you to the detail here. Now, a lot of people hasn't really paid too much attention and mostly understand how the government of Australia will extend all the visa holder of 485 visas. But there's a little part of the things which I believe it's a major change coming up. And it's a change to open up for more skill migrant. How do I find that? Let's have a look. Now the first one, basically the point form says but I mean anyway, at the top of all this media things that the Minister of Immigration has said about basically is for extending those 485 visa holders who has been disadvantaged due to the border control. They will not be able to return back to Australia, so they lost the right to be Australian work, so they're given that right back to everybody. And there's a permanent changes to the length of 485 visas. So by master course, there's no longer differentiation by coursework and research. It will change permanently from 1st of December to 3 years PSW visa for all the graduates, and also changing from 1.5 year to 2 year for all the vets graduate, matching with all the PSW bachelor degree graduates. Now there's another thing that's coming up from 1st of December to July 1st 2022. There are more changes coming out. So what are they saying here? They basically saying they are also other changes for temporary graduates, setting to ensure Australia remain competitive and attractive destination for international students. So these additional changes are there to make the Australian international education more competitive. Competing with who? Competing with UK, USA, Canada, and New Zealand. So obviously it has to be attractive enough. Now, how do they do that? How does the Australian government do that? First of all, as I said, they extend the Graduate-Work visa because obviously UK had introduced the Graduate-Work visa as well, and so on with all the other countries. So they want to make it better, longer and better. And the other thing, I think this is very, very important. As a concession during COVID-19 pandemic, the state period of the temporary graduate subclass 485 visa Graduate-Work stream, that's just called a Graduate-Work stream so it's easier to understand, will increase from 18 to 24 months. And here's the important part: the application requirement will be streamlined. Streamline means simplify, okay? By removing requirement for the graduate to nominate an occupation from skill occupation list. Now this is huge. This is big. A lot of people have missed this out. Now, traditionally, graduate work stream required to nominate an occupation which is only listed on the medium and long-term skill occupation list, so MLTSSL. Now that limits to all the vets graduate to be, as you know, commonly know, a lot of people had applied for cookery course, and also the auto mechanic course, carpentry course, childcare services course, anything else you haven't really heard of. Now, the reason they're removing that means all other courses under vets, that means not undergraduate, not getting into a bachelor degree, okay, diploma, advanced diploma, they are all available. Now, it's very important. Now, I think the true reason here is trying to save the private education sector. There are so many private education schools in Australia, around Australia, they're almost going bankrupt during these 2 years. Now, obviously, the university has been funded by the government, so they're fine. But what about all these private sector, private education sectors? So all these teaching, sport, automotive, fitness courses, any type of these courses, as long as they meet Australian study requirement, that means 2 years of study, you're fine. So previously, now that's giving an example. For example, the hairdressing courses. Now, back, I don't know how many years ago, if you study hairdressing, you were still able to go 485 and things like that. But then, what had happened a couple of years back, they had cut the entire skill occupation list and put it into two different ones. One is the medium and long term. One is short term. Short term, those occupations in the short term list cannot apply for 485 visa. Now, pity. So hairdressers cannot do it. What about patisserie? Cannot do it. And a lot of other courses, you name it, you cannot do it. What about business courses? No, you cannot do it. But by removing occupation, also meant if there's no occupation nominated, then obviously there is no skill assessment required. Then it will be the same as PSW, right? So this is huge. And it says that these changes of temporary graduate visa period will implement from 1st December, and the removal of the skill occupation list will from 1st of July. So the actual law is pending to be out. And final but not least, let's read this. Increase of length of temporary graduate visa master by course will end the vets graduate with expanding opportunity for vet graduate to apply temporary graduate will benefit our economy. So look, the key here is to benefit. The real word should be saving the private education sector. So they want all these vet graduate, they no longer required to go through occupation and nomination. So let's jump into the actual web page and let's compare. So I've got these two opened up. I've got the PSW and the graduate both open up. Let's look at the differences between them. So let's both click onto the eligibility. Now there is a major differences here. Obviously the age is the same, as you can see. Okay, have this visa, that's all the same. Having the student visa. We will go into the law later, that's why I have that open. So these are all the same, but PSW, they cannot accept anyone who had been a student back in 2011 November. Now let's close that. Okay, now Australian study requirement, that is the same, because that's a difference. As you can see here, the only difference is additional to the graduate work is that they have eligible qualification degree or above, so they need degree or above. But then the graduate obviously can be degree, it can be anything else as well. So let's go into the skill. This is graduate, the skill qualification. I think this, see that is not there. Now the Australian study requirement and have study education and have the English, that's it, that's for the PSW. Now what's the difference between the graduate here is that you need to have skills and qualification that Australian needs, and that is the skill occupation list here. Look at it here. This is the major difference. As you can see in the PSW, okay, there is no such button for eligibility. All the other one are all the same. So this one requires the applicant to nominate one occupation on that medium long-term strategic skill list and have a degree, blah, 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 and have a skill assessment. So if we go back to the joint media by the Minister of Immigration says, streamline by removing requirement of graduate to nominate an occupation from the skill occupation list. So that will basically meant you don't even, this whole thing is gone. If this whole thing is gone, it will be almost the same as PSW. So what I expect and suspect the changes will be 485 will be streamlined as just one. There's no more different stream. Well, obviously there is a Hong Kong stream, but there's no more other PSW and the graduate stream. So there's only changes to if you study vet and bachelor, you get 2 years. And if you study master, you get 3 years, and that's it. And you get a second round of the second 485 visa. Whether or not that can actually bundle into graduates, I'm not too sure. But let's have a look into the actual law. Okay, now where the actual law says here. Let's jump in there into the legend. I've got this open for 485 visa, as you can see. Now we will skip the common criteria and go straight into, okay, here we go, the PSW. Okay, and down there, up here is the graduate stream. So what is the differences within these laws is basically, now skip, don't worry about the 485.232 and 233. That's for the second 485 visa. That's for people who had 485 visa and continue to stay and work in regional area. They'll actually get their second visa. So if we compare solely for this part and the graduate with this part, okay, the only differences here is that 6 month thing is all the same. Australian study requirement, that is all the same. Again, the only differences here is this part where it says it needs to pick an occupation. So it reads, when the application was made, it was accompanying evidence the applicant had applied for assessment for a particular nominated skill occupation by the relevant authority. And also here it's the 485.224, the skills of the applicant, applicant's nominated skill occupation had been assessed. That's for granting, because if that assessed doesn't go through, obviously that won't go. But if there is no occupation to be selected, to be nominated, then obviously this is redundant. We don't need to know the result of the skill assessment because the occupation is not required to be done as well. So all this, I mean, not from here, is all going to cut through or out. So coming back, that is huge. The reason I'm saying it's huge is it's going back to early of this year, where the Parliament committee had coined the idea to, forget about the medium, long term, and short term. Let's just put them all back together. So if you have followed my channel long enough, you notice that I said the nomination sponsor employment visa is going back to the old scheme where it used to be 457. So why bother changing? But I think it's the key to the whole skill migration. So there's no more requirement. If you study vet or bachelor or higher education degrees, you're all good. You all get 485 visa. So this is great. Now, bear in mind that does not mean picking up a low cost tuition costs vet courses will actually guarantee a student visa. It's still a risk there. You have to make sure that if you study, if your highest qualification was, for example, master, and now you're picking up a course for example, diploma for fashion design, just for instance, now you still need to demonstrate the reason that why you're picking these courses to study with. So otherwise, GTE will still kick in, and perhaps refusal will still be there as well. But again, this is a major milestone of the change of skill migration. Now, finally, how would this affect in the future? Now, first of all, we know that for short, well, not short term, medium term as well, the temporary skill shortage, which is the employment sponsored visa, working visa for 482. The eligibility is that you need to demonstrate at least 2 years of work experiences, and if your qualification was gained in Australia, there's no skill assessment required. So this will actually be streamlined into this. So for instance, if you study, for just going back to fashion design, if you study diploma fashion design, 2 years you meet the Australian study requirement, and obviously you got your English, and you get 2 years of the 485 visa, right? And you continue to work, you get that 2 years, and then you can actually be eligible for 482 visa if the sponsor is happy to nominate you, and you can then continue with this. 3 years later, you'll be able to transfer yourself into 186 TRT stream. That's a permanent resident, and that's huge because previously it's kind of impossible for any vet graduate to gain 2 years of work experiences in order to be nominated or sponsored. Now, whether or not they will drop this down or the changes coming up, I'm not too sure. But see, a simple change on removing occupation requirement and skill assessments, it's actually huge. Now, I can imagine there will be a lot more changes coming up to actually accompany this. For example, the skill occupation list will definitely be changed to actually match this requirement. For example, because if they do that, having the comparison of medium and long term and short term possibly is not required anymore. It's redundant. If you don't need to change, you see, if you don't need to pick and select a nominate an occupation, why bother have two different occupations, right? I think this is all moving towards a very good direction for skill migration, and I'm looking forward for all these changes. And make sure you subscribe to my channel, so once all these little updates that may affect your migration opportunity. And if you do have more questions, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And I'll see you next video. Goodbye.